Emily had been walking for hours, maybe even the whole day, though she could no longer remember the exact time. The sun hung low in the sky, throwing long shadows across the open Texas land. Her feet felt heavy, her throat dry, and her eyes stung from dust and exhaustion. She kept telling herself to take one more step, then another, because stopping meant giving up, and she could not afford that. Not now. Not after everything she had been through. Her clothes were dusty, her hair tangled from the wind, and her face showed signs of days without proper rest. Caleb Turner, the owner of the ranch, was finishing his evening routine when he saw something strange near the edge of his property. At first, he thought it was just a loose calf or maybe a traveler passing by the quiet road. But as the figure came closer, he realized it was a young woman, alone, tired, and clearly struggling to stay on her feet. Caleb paused with his hand resting on the gate, watching her carefully. It was rare for strangers to appear at his ranch, especially at this hour. Emily finally reached the gate and grabbed it for support, her fingers shaking slightly. She lifted her eyes and saw a tall man standing a few steps away. He looked strong, calm, and serious, with a sun-worn face that suggested he spent most of his life under open skies. She swallowed hard, unsure how he would react to seeing someone like her suddenly appear out of nowhere. Caleb took a step forward but kept his voice gentle. "Are you all right?" he asked. Emily tried to answer, but her voice came out faint. She forced a small breath and whispered, "Please, make it quick." Caleb froze for a moment. Confused by her words, he didn't understand what she meant. She sounded nervous, almost like she expected something unpleasant to happen. Her eyes didn't carry anger or impatience, they carried fear. A fear he did not recognize, but one strong enough to make her assume he might speak harshly or turn her away without even hearing her out. "What do you mean?" Caleb asked softly, keeping a bit of distance so she wouldn't feel pressured. Emily lowered her head, her grip tightening on the gate. "If you're going to tell me to leave, just say it fast. I don't think I can stand here much longer." Her words hit Caleb in a way he didn't expect. This wasn't a person looking for trouble or trying to take advantage of kindness. This was someone who believed she didn't deserve help at all. Someone who expected rejection so strongly that she wanted it to be quick so it wouldn't hurt as much. Caleb's voice became even calmer. "I'm not telling you to leave," he said. "You look like you need help." Emily blinked in surprise. She wasn't used to hearing such words from a stranger. She had prepared herself for criticism, sharp questions, or maybe even being ignored. Instead, this man spoke with simple kindness, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She tried to step forward, but her legs felt weak. Caleb noticed she was struggling and reached out, stopping himself halfway to make sure she was comfortable. "May I help you walk inside?" he asked. Emily hesitated. Trust did not come easily anymore. Still, her body was too tired to argue. She gave a small nod and Caleb gently supported her as they walked toward the porch. Each step felt like a small victory for her, even though her mind was still racing with worry. Caleb opened the door and led her into the ranch house. It was simple but warm, smelling faintly of wood and freshly cooked food. Emily hadn't smelled anything comforting in days. She could almost feel the tension in her shoulders loosen just a little. "Sit here," Caleb said, guiding her to a chair near the kitchen table. He filled a glass with cool water and placed it in front of her. Emily's hands trembled as she reached for it. She tried to take small sips, but the relief of water made her drink more quickly than she expected. Caleb didn't comment. He just let her drink until she slowed down on her own. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the evening wind outside. Emily stared at the table, trying to gather her thoughts. She felt safe for now, but she also felt ashamed for arriving like this, tired, lost, and desperate. Caleb noticed her discomfort. "You don't need to explain anything until you're ready," he said. "Just rest." Emily closed her eyes for a moment. She had heard people say things like that before, but rarely with honesty. She could sense that Caleb meant it. Still, the words, "make it quick," echoed in her mind. She hoped he wouldn't ask too many questions. She wasn't ready to relive the painful details of the last few days. After a few minutes, Caleb prepared a fresh cup of tea. He placed it in front of her, and the warmth from the cup spread gently through her hands. Emily hadn't felt something warm and calming in a while. It reminded her of peaceful mornings she used to have before her life changed so suddenly. Caleb sat across from her but kept a respectful distance. He didn't want her to feel pressured or watched. He simply wanted her to know she wasn't alone anymore. Emily finally spoke, her voice soft. "I didn't mean to bother you. I was just trying to keep going until I found somewhere safe." "You're not bothering me," Caleb replied. "Anyone would need help in your condition. I'm glad you stopped here instead of pushing yourself too far." She looked up, surprised again by his gentle tone. Most people she had met recently were in a hurry, distracted, or uninterested in strangers. But here was a man who paused his own work just to make sure she was all right. "I wasn't sure if you'd help," Emily admitted, her eyes dropping back to her tea. "People don't usually help someone like me." Caleb leaned back slightly, thinking about her words. "Someone like you?" he repeated. "You're just someone who's tired and needs a safe place for a bit. That's all I see." Emily felt a small wave of relief wash over her. For the first time in days, she didn't feel judged. She didn't feel like she had to defend herself or explain every detail of her situation. She could just sit, breathe, and feel human again. The sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, filling the room with a soft evening glow. Emily watched the light fade and felt her body relaxing more with each passing minute. She could feel the exhaustion settling deeper now that she wasn't fighting to stay upright. Caleb stood and said, "You can stay here tonight. I'll set up the guest room for you. You need rest." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," he said simply. "Everyone needs help at some point." For a moment, Emily didn't know how to respond. She had prepared herself for rejection, not kindness. The words she whispered earlier, "Please, make it quick," had come from fear and pain. But now, sitting in this quiet ranch house with a stranger who had shown her nothing but understanding, she felt something new, a small spark of hope. Caleb guided her to the guest room. It was modest but clean, with a soft bed and a small lamp on the wooden table. Emily stood at the doorway, looking around as if she were seeing a safe place for the first time in a long while. "If you need anything, I'll be in the next room," Caleb said, before stepping back to give her space. Emily nodded. "Thank you, truly." Caleb gave a small nod in return and closed the door gently. Emily sat on the bed, her hands still trembling slightly. She felt overwhelmed, but in a good way this time. Her journey had been full of fear and uncertainty, but tonight she had found a place to rest, and someone who cared enough to help without asking for anything. She lay down slowly, her body sinking into the mattress. For the first time in days, she felt safe enough to close her eyes. As sleep began to pull her in, she thought about Caleb's calm voice, his patience, and his surprising kindness. And for the first time in a long while, she felt that maybe, just maybe, things could start to change. Emily woke up the next morning feeling confused for a moment, as if she had forgotten where she was. The soft glow of the morning sun came through the small window, lighting up the simple guest room. For a brief second, she wondered if yesterday had only been a dream, finding a safe place, meeting a kind stranger, resting without fear. But when she sat up and looked around, she realized everything was real. She was still at the ranch, still in a quiet room and still safe. She stood up slowly, feeling the weight of the past few days in her muscles. Her body ached, but not as sharply as before. The rest had helped more than she expected. She walked toward the mirror on the wall and looked at herself. Her hair was messy, her face tired. But there was something else too. A calmness she hadn't seen in a long time. Outside the room, she heard the soft sounds of someone moving around, the clinking of dishes, the low hum of a kettle heating water. Caleb was awake. She hesitated before stepping out, unsure of how to face him after everything. She still didn't know how much to share or whether she should share anything at all, but she could not stay in the room forever. Taking a small breath, she opened the door and walked into the kitchen. Caleb stood near the stove, pouring hot water into a mug. He turned and gave her a gentle nod. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm and steady. Emily returned a small nod. "Good morning." "I made some tea if you'd like," he offered. She accepted the mug quietly and sat at the table. The warmth of the cup felt comforting in her hands. Caleb didn't sit right away. He gave her space, letting her settle before joining her at the table with his own cup. "You slept well?" he asked. Emily nodded again. "Yes, better than I have in days." "I'm glad," Caleb said. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that gave her room to breathe. Finally, Emily placed the cup down, gathering her courage. "I didn't thank you properly yesterday," she said softly. "You helped me even though you didn't know me. I don't know how to express how much that meant." Caleb looked at her with understanding. "You don't need to thank me. You needed help. That's enough." Emily's eyes lowered to the table. "People don't usually think that way. Most people ask questions first. They wonder what someone wants or what trouble they bring. I've gotten used to people turning me away." "That shouldn't be normal," Caleb replied. "Sometimes people forget how important simple kindness is." His words made something shift inside her. She realized she had almost forgotten that kindness existed at all. After a few moments, Caleb asked gently, "Do you feel a little better today?" Emily nodded. "A little. Enough to think clearly again." "If you're comfortable," he continued, "you can tell me what happened, but only if you want to." Emily felt her breath catch slightly. She had known this moment would come. Caleb wasn't forcing her, but the question felt heavy. She took a slow sip of her tea, trying to calm her thoughts. Talking about her recent experiences scared her, because it meant reliving emotions she wasn't ready to face. But something inside her also wanted to be heard, maybe for the first time in weeks. She set the mug down slowly. "I don't know where to start," she admitted. "I don't want to say too much or make things uncomfortable." "Just start wherever you can," Caleb said. "I'm listening." Emily folded her hands on the table. She looked out the window, gathering her strength. "I left home a few weeks ago," she began. "Not because I wanted to, but because I felt I didn't have another choice." Caleb didn't rush her. He didn't ask what pushed her away from home or who was involved. He simply nodded, encouraging her to continue at her own pace. "I tried to stay in a few places on the way," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But almost everywhere I went, people either ignored me, judged me, or asked questions that made me feel worse. I kept walking, hoping I'd find someone who wouldn't look at me like I was a problem." Caleb listened quietly. She appreciated that he didn't interrupt or try to guess details. "I haven't eaten properly for days," she continued. "And I barely slept because I didn't feel safe anywhere. Yesterday, when I saw your ranch from far away, I didn't think you would help either. That's why I said what I said. I wanted you to tell me quickly to leave if that's what you planned. I was too tired to hear a long explanation." Caleb looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "You don't deserve to feel that way," he said softly. "There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Emily felt her throat tighten a little. She wasn't used to people saying such simple, supportive things. "I didn't actually want to be alone," she said. "But after so many days of being turned away or misunderstood, it felt easier to expect the worst. I thought maybe you'd see me as trouble, too." Caleb shook his head lightly. "You walked a long way, didn't you?" Emily nodded. "Yes, too long." Caleb leaned back in his chair. "That takes strength." Emily almost smiled. She didn't feel strong. She felt overwhelmed, lost, and tired. But hearing someone say she had strength made her feel a little more grounded. She continued slowly. "I wasn't running from the law or anything like that. It wasn't something dramatic, just personal issues that became too heavy. I needed space to breathe. I needed to feel safe somewhere, but every time I thought I found a place, things got worse." Caleb's voice remained steady. "Everyone's struggle is different. You don't have to justify it." Emily looked at him with mild surprise. She had spent so long explaining herself to people who never truly listened that this patience felt unreal. She wasn't used to being given the freedom to speak, pause, or stay silent without judgment. She continued, "I didn't expect to find someone like you in a place this quiet. This ranch feels far from the world. It's peaceful. That's why I live here," Caleb said with a small smile. "The quiet keeps my mind clear." Emily felt a small spark of comfort. "I wish I had a place like this," she whispered. "Somewhere to breathe." "You can stay here as long as you need to rest," Caleb said sincerely. "I'll make sure you're okay." Emily's eyes filled with emotion she tried to hide. She looked away so he wouldn't see the slight glimmer forming. It had been so long since anyone had offered her help without expecting something in return. She took a slow breath. "Last night was the first night in weeks that I didn't feel scared. I still don't fully understand why you helped me." Caleb shrugged gently. "Sometimes helping someone is just the right thing to do. You looked tired, hurt, and alone. Anyone with a heart would have helped you." Emily wasn't sure if that was true. She had met plenty of people who had walked past her without a second glance. But she chose not to argue. She simply said, "Thank you." Caleb stood up and started preparing a simple breakfast: eggs, bread, and fruit. Emily watched silently. The normalcy of his actions calmed her. She realized how long it had been since she had sat in a kitchen and watched someone cook without feeling anxious. "You don't have to help with anything," Caleb told her when he saw her start to rise. "Just eat and regain your energy." She nodded and stayed seated. When he placed the plate in front of her, she hesitated before taking the first bite. The food tasted warm and comforting, and she felt grateful for every bite. As they ate, Caleb said, "You said you were looking for a safe place. If you want, I can help you figure out your next steps." Emily looked up slowly. "Next steps?" "Yes," Caleb said. "You don't have to decide today. But when you feel ready, you can tell me what you need, whether it's finding a place to stay, contacting someone, or starting fresh somewhere. Whatever it is, I'll help." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time. Someone was offering not just temporary rest, but support. Real support. "Why are you being so kind?" she asked quietly. Caleb met her eyes. "Because everyone deserves kindness when they're going through something hard, and because you walked a long road alone. You shouldn't have to walk the rest of it without help." Emily looked down, touched more deeply than she could express. She didn't have a plan yet. She didn't know where her life would go next. But for the first time in many days, she felt that her story wasn't ending in fear. It was beginning again in a quiet ranch house with a stranger who didn't treat her like a burden. As she finished her meal, she felt a small, steady strength growing inside her. She still had a long path ahead, but now she wasn't facing it alone. Emily woke up earlier than usual the next morning. She had slept deeply again, something she still wasn't used to, but she was beginning to appreciate it. For the first time in weeks, she felt her body waking up naturally instead of from fear or discomfort. The light coming through the window was soft and golden, warming the room with a peaceful glow. She sat at the edge of the bed, letting her thoughts settle. Things still felt uncertain, but there was clarity building inside her. Caleb's kindness, the calmness of the ranch, and the steady rhythm of a new routine were slowly helping her think about her life in a different way. She knew she couldn't stay there forever, no matter how safe it felt. She had to face the world again. She had to make decisions she had been avoiding. Still, the idea frightened her. Emily stood up, stretched quietly, and walked out into the main room. Caleb was already awake, as always. He stood by the kitchen counter with a notebook open in front of him. He seemed to be making a list, something practical, maybe ranch tasks or supplies he needed. When he heard Emily's soft footsteps, he looked up and gave her a calm, warm nod. "Morning," he said in his steady voice. "Good morning," Emily replied, pulling a chair out and sitting down at the table. "Hungry?" Caleb asked, already reaching for the pan. "A little," Emily said. "Thank you." She watched him move around the kitchen with a quiet energy, the easy confidence of someone who knew every corner of his home by heart. It reminded her of how different her life had been recently. Unpredictable, unstable, full of uncertainty. Here, even small routines felt comforting. When Caleb placed a simple breakfast in front of her, she smiled softly. "You really don't have to do all this," she said gently. "I know," Caleb replied, sitting down across from her. "But you needed rest, and now that you've had it, I think it's time to talk about what comes next." Emily froze slightly. She knew this conversation was coming, but she wasn't sure she was ready for it. She set her fork down and took a slow breath. "I don't know what to do next," she admitted. "I'm still trying to figure it out." Caleb nodded. He didn't look disappointed, impatient, or confused. He simply accepted her words. "That's all right," he said. "Most people don't know their next step until they're calm enough to think. You're getting there." Emily appreciated that he didn't push. For a moment, she felt safe enough to open up a bit more. "I don't want to go back to where I came from," she said quietly. "Not until I feel ready." "You shouldn't go back until you feel safe and strong," Caleb said, gently reinforcing her own thought. "But I think you also shouldn't avoid it forever. Some things in life need to be faced, and you don't have to face them alone." Emily looked up, surprised. "You're saying that like, you plan to help me?" "Because I do," Caleb answered. Those simple words felt like a wave washing over her, unexpected, steady, grounding. "Why?" Emily asked softly, genuinely curious. "You don't even know everything yet." "I know enough," Caleb replied. "I know you've been carrying too much by yourself. I know you've been living with fear and uncertainty. And I know you didn't come here to trouble anyone. You came because you needed a safe place to stop for a moment. That's all the reason I need." Emily lowered her eyes, letting the warmth of his words sink in. After breakfast, Caleb stood up and started gathering a few things, his hat, a small bag, and a notebook. Emily watched him, confused at first. "What are you doing?" she asked. Caleb slipped on his boots and said calmly, "Preparing." "For what?" "For your next step." Emily blinked, unsure what he meant. "What do you mean by that?" Caleb walked to the door, then turned to face her. "I'm taking you to town." Emily felt her breath catch. "Town? Why?" "Because whatever happened before you came here, you shouldn't deal with it by running forever," Caleb explained. "You should deal with it properly, with support, not alone. And town is the first place to start." Emily's heart beat faster. "Caleb, I'm not ready." I don't know what will happen. I don't know if I can handle it. Caleb moved closer, not too close, but close enough that she felt his quiet reassurance. You don't have to handle it alone. I'll be right there, every step. I'm not letting you face anything by yourself. Emily stared at him, completely stunned. She had expected him to encourage her, maybe give advice, but not this. Not this kind of commitment, not this kind of support. She whispered, "Why would you help me this much? You don't even know me." Caleb gave a small, gentle smile. Sometimes helping someone is just the right thing to do, and something tells me you've been without support for too long. Emily looked down at her hands. A soft, warm feeling spread through her chest, comfort mixed with fear, gratitude mixed with disbelief. She didn't know if she deserved this kind of kindness, but she wanted to trust it. After a few moments, she nodded slowly, though her hands trembled slightly. "Okay," she said. "I'll go." Caleb's expression softened. "Good. Take your time to get ready. We'll leave when you're comfortable." Emily went back to the guest room and took a long look at herself in the mirror. Her hair still messy, her clothes still worn, but her eyes looked different now, less empty, less lost. She brushed her hair, washed her face, and tried to steady her breathing. She wasn't sure what waited for her in town, answers, closure, support, or maybe more questions, but she wasn't walking toward it alone, and that made all the difference. When she stepped outside, Caleb was already saddling his horse and checking the equipment. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. "You ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," she said. Caleb extended a hand, not to pull her, not to rush her, but simply to offer support. Emily placed her hand in his, feeling the gentle reassurance in his grip. He helped her mount the horse carefully, making sure she felt balanced and secure. Then he climbed up behind her, keeping enough distance to give her space but staying close enough to guide the reins. "Hold on," he said softly. "I've got the rest." And with that, they began the quiet ride toward town. The warm morning breeze brushed against them, carrying the scent of open fields and new beginnings. As the horse moved at a steady, gentle pace, Emily felt a strange mix of emotions: fear of the unknown, gratitude for the support beside her, and a new strength rising slowly inside her. She wasn't just running anymore, she was moving forward. The distance to town wasn't short, but every step of the horse brought her closer to clarity. Caleb rode patiently, guiding the way without rushing. He wanted her to feel calm, not pressured. He understood that this journey wasn't just physical, it was emotional too, and Emily felt it. With each step, the fear she carried began to loosen its grip. Not completely, but enough to breathe. She looked out at the horizon and whispered, almost to herself, "Thank you." Caleb heard her but didn't answer right away. He simply let the silence wrap around them like a gentle blanket. After a moment, he said quietly, "You're not alone anymore." Those words stayed with her as they continued on the winding trail. They stayed in her mind, in her heart, in every nervous breath she took. For the first time in weeks, Emily wasn't just surviving. She was heading toward a better future with someone walking beside her. And that, more than anything, made her feel stronger than she had in a long, long time. Emma was a traveling journalist who loved exploring quiet towns and hidden places. One summer afternoon, while driving through a dusty rural area, her car suddenly broke down in the middle of nowhere. There were no houses nearby, no shops, and her phone signal was weak. The sun was setting and she began to worry. After walking for more than a mile, she finally saw an old wooden ranch at the end of a long dirt road. Horses were grazing in the fields, and a tall man in a wide hat was fixing a fence. His clothes were dusty, his hands strong, and his eyes calm. His name was Jack Turner, a rancher who lived alone after losing his parents. He rarely talked to visitors, and he did not like surprises. But when he saw Emma walking toward him with a tired face, he stopped his work. Emma explained her situation. Jack listened quietly, then nodded. He wasn't used to helping strangers, but something about her gentle voice made him step forward. He told her she could rest at his ranch while he checked her car. Inside the ranch, Emma noticed the place was simple but peaceful. Old photographs hung on the walls. A warm smell of wood filled the air. Jack made her a cup of tea and told her she could sit by the window. While they talked, a sudden storm began outside. Wind, dust, and rain made it impossible to go anywhere. Jack informed her she might have to stay longer than she planned. Emma, feeling uneasy and overwhelmed, whispered softly, "Please, make it quick." She only meant the car repair and her stay, but Jack misunderstood her tone. For a moment he looked shocked, unsure of what she meant. Little did she know that small sentence would uncover secrets Jack had kept hidden for years. Part 2. The Shocking Truth. Jack sat down across from Emma, his hands slightly shaking. Her words had triggered something inside him, an old memory he tried to bury. He took a deep breath and finally spoke. He told her about the day he lost his family. Years ago, on a stormy night almost exactly like this one, his parents' truck had crashed on the same road where Emma's car broke down. Jack was the only one who survived. Since then, he feared storms and unexpected visitors. Emma listened with respect. She didn't interrupt. She saw how difficult it was for Jack to share something so painful. She realized her words had sounded urgent and scared, and she apologized for causing him stress. Jack shook his head and assured her it was not her fault. In fact, her presence reminded him that he wasn't alone. For the first time in many years, he felt comfortable enough to talk about his fears. As the storm got stronger, the lights flickered and the wind howled. Emma noticed Jack trying to hide his discomfort. She offered to help him check around the ranch to make sure everything was safe. Jack appreciated her kindness. Together, they went outside, holding lanterns in the dark. While checking the barn, they heard a loud crash. One of the horse stalls had collapsed from the wind, and a young horse was trapped. Without hesitating, Jack rushed inside. Emma followed him despite the danger. Jack lifted the broken wood, and Emma pulled the frightened animal free. The teamwork surprised both of them. By the time they returned to the house, soaked and tired, something between them had changed. They felt a quiet trust forming, a feeling neither expected. The storm raged on, but inside, a new connection had begun. Part 3. The Bond That Grew. Emma woke early the next morning. The storm had passed, but the air still carried the smell of wet earth and fresh grass. Jack was already outside feeding the horses. His face looked calmer than the night before. Emma joined him, asking if he needed help. Jack hesitated at first. He wasn't used to sharing his chores, but then nodded with a small smile. Together they cleaned the barn, checked the fences, and fed the animals. While working, they talked about their lives. Emma shared stories from her travels. Jack told her about growing up on the ranch, learning skills from his father, and the strong values his mother taught him. Emma enjoyed listening. Jack enjoyed having someone to share things with. As the day warmed, they rode the horses along the open fields. Emma felt the wind, the freedom, and a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Jack noticed her joy and felt proud to be the one showing her this world. But the more time they spent together, the more Jack feared losing it. He knew Emma would leave soon when her car got fixed. The thought bothered him more than he expected. That evening, while sitting near the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange, Emma asked Jack why he lived alone. He took a long breath and told her the truth. He was afraid of letting people into his life, afraid of caring for someone again after losing so much, afraid that happiness never stayed for long. Emma placed a gentle hand on his arm and told him he didn't have to face everything alone. Her words were calm, sincere, and comforting. Jack looked at her with a new understanding. He realized Emma wasn't just a visitor. She was someone who brought warmth into his quiet world. Before going inside, Emma whispered softly, "Sometimes the biggest risks bring the biggest changes." Jack didn't reply, but those words stayed in his heart all night. Part 4. The Final Decision. The next morning, the sky was clear and the air cool. Jack checked Emma's car again and finally repaired the engine. The moment she had been waiting for had arrived. She could continue her journey. But instead of feeling happy, Emma felt something heavy in her chest. Jack walked toward her with the car keys in his hand. His face was calm, but his eyes showed a sadness he couldn't hide. He thanked her for helping during the storm and for listening to his story. Emma thanked him for his kindness and for giving her shelter. Both stood in silence for a moment. Emma realized she didn't want to leave so quickly. She had discovered something rare at the ranch: peace, honesty, and a person who made her feel understood without saying much. Jack, on the other hand, fought with his thoughts. He wanted to ask her to stay longer, but he was afraid it would sound selfish. He feared she might say no, and he didn't want to push her. When Emma opened the car door, Jack finally spoke. He told her she had changed something inside him. He said he wasn't the same lonely man she first met. She had helped him face memories he avoided for years. She had reminded him that even a quiet ranch could feel full of life. Emma felt her eyes sting. She looked at Jack with a warm, grateful smile and told him she felt the same. She told him the ranch didn't feel like a stranger's home anymore. Then she took a deep breath and said something that surprised both of them. She asked Jack if he would allow her to stay for a few more days to write her travel story about ranch life, and maybe understand more about him. Jack stood frozen for a moment. Then slowly, a genuine smile appeared on his face. It was the first smile filled with hope he had shown in years. He told her she was welcome to stay as long as she wished. Emma stepped away from the car and walked back toward him. For the first time since she arrived, the silence between them felt warm, not uncertain. Together, they walked toward the ranch house, knowing that their meeting, unexpected, simple, and honest, had changed both of their lives. It began with a broken car, a whisper in the storm, and a rancher who finally opened his heart.